So I'm Lindsay Grime. Originally I'm an illustrator, but now I describe myself also as an artist, and in a way labels are quite sort of difficult to apply because I sort of expanded what I do in a big way to include murals and public art such as this commission. I also make ceramic jewellery, so it's quite a diverse practice that I have.
I'm Ellie. I go by Ellietype as my last name. I'm a multi-disciplinary visual artist and craftsperson. I mostly specialise in lettering design, so that kind of encompasses signwriting, but I also do mural painting, I make fabric banners. And yeah, I have a mixed practice. I do participatory art projects and community projects, but I also have my own practice. I do stuff for clients, I do commercial projects, I do a bit of everything really.
Yeah, so we started together, I think, working on festival decor for Kelburn Garden Party, and that kind of really, I think, well, specifically for me, I would say, like, skilled me up in terms of making much bigger painted pieces, and also sort of thinking about immersive environments. So I feel that that's something that then kind of we professionalised further and took into some mural commissions, such there's one in Perth Art Gallery. We painted the ladies and gents toilets in there. And I think what works in the partnership is that we kind of like complete each other's skills, because Ellie makes lettering and text-based pieces, and I make more illustrative, image-based pieces. Yeah. The two really kind of come together, and also there's a sort of like level of technical sort of difficulty that we can take on, I think, more easily as a duo than we could individually.
Yeah, and I would say there's other skills that I guess I'm more maybe technically and practically minded, and you're more creative, I think, in a lot of ways, or like with the ideas and the sort of pulling that stuff out. So I think we kind of balance each other out.
Yeah, I always feel like it's greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah,
which is really nice.
Yeah, we can take on much bigger projects as a pair than we would be able to individually, and also support each other throughout the process. And it's really nice to have somebody to work with and bounce ideas off.
Yeah, so our installation, it's made up of 5 separate signs made out of cut out aluminium, and they're hanging from welded steel brackets. They're going to be installed sort of sequentially along a vennel, and they're all highly painted with enamel paint, and the kind of reference material, the theme it's all talking about an old department store that existed in Perth for around 150 years, McEwen's department store. So that was the kind of origin of the imagery.
Yeah, and the signs themselves are made up of multiple pieces, a lot of them, so hung by chains and kind of forming little scenes. They're all double-sided as well, so there's going to be lots of different viewpoints, vantage points, and the way they interact with each other should also be interesting.
So yeah, the inspiration behind the piece was McEwen's department store, which was a historic department store in Perth that lasted for around 150 years, I believe, from the late 19th century all the way into the 2000s. And originally with the brief, there was 2 possible directions. So there was also, the brief was, the commission was for an installation in Baxter's Vennel, which had this sort of dual history of McEwen's, but then also like a baking guild. So there was a sort of 2 sort of trades or crafts that had lineage associated with it. So the first step was really to go to the archives in the library, in the A.K. Bell Library, thank you. And to just basically see what was there, what I could find about these 2 start points. And the clear winner, I guess, was McEwen's, just in terms of the volume of visuals and archival materials, whereas with the bakers, I did actually find really incredible ancient letters that I got to. I felt like quite like, oh wow, I get to handle these. Unfortunately, I felt like I kind of needed to be a doctor of history to like get anything from them, because they were so kind of like tiny, like very difficult to decipher. And I guess there wasn't the visuals, so it was quite hard to connect to that history. Whereas with McEwen's, I opened up these giant sort of packages, and there was incredible 19th century French like fashion plate engravings, all sort of hand coloured with all the Parisian fashions. So that was like right off the bat, it was quite like, oh wow, these are great images. And then from there was a span of like 20th century fashion history, basically, like wartime fashions, 50s fashions, and all the sort of, it was all the kind of brochures and leaflets and mail order catalogues that they had, and things that you could send off your measurements, like a made-to-measure tailoring service. There was photos of the staff, there was like letters that had been kept. There was like quite an incredible like record of this particular department store and how kind of prestigious and important it was in the life of Perth at that time, or over this very long time. And I guess that also sort of made us reflect a lot on how much that's changed, and the advent of high street shops and fast fashion, and how it's gone completely kind of to the opposite extreme now. Whereas before it was a very, like a high quality kind of slow fashion, tailoring. Even the way that advertising talks about fashion was emphasising longevity.
Yeah,
like,
it'd be like the one thing that you got, the one coat that you had that winter, the one pair of shoes you got that spring. It's like emphasising how well made and how
long lasting things are.
Yeah, exactly.
Skirts that stay good a long time.
Which is not, I think, prioritised at all anymore. And we were really interested, I think, in this story of like the craft of tailoring and that side of it as well. And
it was also home sewing as well. You could buy fabric in that shop.
Yes,
so you could,
patterns.
Yeah, so it was,
haberdashery, all of that. So it was, they're encouraging people to make their own clothes, and that was a market that was there as well.
It's a very different relationship to clothes and fashion. There was also gloves was a big thing in Perth. There was something like 30,000 pairs of gloves a year, was that?
Yeah, I think so.
And we went to the museum, to Perth Museum. There's a really beautiful banner, which is for the Glove Makers Guild, with a lovely quote which we've incorporated into the piece.
The perfect honour of a craft. Can't remember the rest of it, but
wrote
out a lot.
Basically the sort of importance of like good craftsmanship. That being the kind of reward for...
The reward is in doing it really well, not in monetary, or like,
not in monetary gain.
Yeah.
So everything that you see in the pieces we've made is based on a reference that was in that archive. So nothing is sort of pure invention. It's kind of all the phrases, for example. We came across a lot of very like amusing, charming old kind of slogans within the old advertising or the catalogues for McEwen's.
Such as, "You feel so good in Scottish wool cloth."
We just had quite a laugh with it and thought it would be like... We also really like to put humour into our work, so we kind of honed in on certain phrases. Honestly, there was a wealth that we could have put way more in, but there was like a limited number of pieces we could make. And the imagery comes out of sort of illustrations, old-fashioned illustrations, like references, for example, like the Parisian fashion plate engraving style, or like a more kind of 70s look.
All the lettering styles, like all the kind of fonts, I mean, I would say alphabets to signwriting, but all the lettering that you see is referencing lettering from those catalogues. So it's all like, there'll be some 60s style, 70s style, 50s. It's all there. It's all, nothing's been made up by us to fill it out.
Yeah. So it's really like a kind of collage in a way, like a love letter to this archive, essentially.
Yeah. We were drawn to working in Perth because we have worked here previously. We're quite like fond of the city. We spent, I think, close to 2 months here a few years ago working on the murals for the Perth Art Gallery toilets, and we were living and working in Perth. We weren't commuting from Glasgow every day. We were here. It was even longer than that because we were coming back and forth for the research period. So we spent a lot of time here. Got friends who live here, and it's just a really nice place to be, and quite inspirational with the gallery and the museum and the history that is here.
Yeah, I'd say like we appreciate like the kind of broader aims of like the council to make this into more of a cultural destination and actually put public art in the city centre. So I think
and like sort of boundary pushing public art, not just the open call. When we saw it was very open. It's not like there's a prescribed idea and it has to fit in with like a historical brief. There's like nothing. It's not prescribed. It was very like we want stuff that's different and
quite contemporary.
Yeah,
you know, like it's a historical place, but it's kind of like
moving
forward.
Yeah, it's really cool
into the future. To me, a vennel, well, it brings to mind this narrow like passageway, a narrow lane, very historical. Like I kind of originally from Edinburgh, so I guess like vennels, that I kind of knew what that was already. And I think in terms of what it evokes, it's like something a bit mysterious, maybe a little bit nefarious, some sort of dodgy historical goings on. And I guess in the case of Perth, it's also it's these kind of like connecting spaces, and they seem to have quite a lot of trade and craft history associated with them as well.
I think from a public art point of view, I was intrigued by it because it's a space that you're moving through. It's not a space that you would have to go to, or a wall that's like a destination point. It's people are always going to be walking past, whether they've gone there on purpose or not, and that's an interesting place to put
it's
public
a
art.
sort of transit route.
Exactly. People are just going to be seeing it by moving through the space and seeing it from different angles.
Yeah, it creates quite a self-contained space to kind of like house that work.
Yes, exactly, like a gallery wall style.
Yeah. So the journey from the initial idea to the installation, I guess it starts really in the archives. So taking a maximum number of photos, I was really just kind of like, let's record kind of everything that's potentially interesting here. And then from there, we basically like poured over all these photos and kind of did a bit of a work of editing and picking out, I guess. And there was sort of recurring themes, I suppose. So, for example, like hats or like something about tailoring and home sewing or things like this. So we kind of collated them into themes like that, and that gave us this sort of really useful resource document we could kind of plunge back into for extra ideas and inspiration. And then from there we started sort of refining it more, working on drawings in the sketchbook, and
I think we knew we wanted to do around 5 of these signs, like maybe 4 to 6, and so once we'd picked out these major themes, we could kind of decide on how many signs and sort of which phrases went with what. And
again, there was like so much more we could have done, so it was quite a difficult process in a way to be like, because we'd thought maybe we'll do a shoe, but then it didn't quite fit. Maybe we weren't quite sure where to go with that, so the shoe kind of went by the wayside. But so that's like really a work, like a working in the sketchbook, and then from there taking it onto the computer, which allowed us to like play around with scale. And I'll also, which you should be able to see in the exhibition, there's lots of small cutouts that I made that helped me with my kind of drawing, because we were working out how they would interact with each other.
Yeah, we needed to work out the silhouettes that worked. So I think one of the reasons that we started with these cutouts was because the signs all had to be double-sided, so it was seeing what shapes fit into the same shapes. So, for example, the head, when you were doing that, you had to check that this one face and hat would fit inside the silhouette of the other face and hat.
Yes.
And so by doing
quite technical. Quite difficult to marry those two aspects where it technically has to work and also has to look good on both sides.
Yeah.
So, but that was a helpful aid, and I kind of installed it between 2 books and had them like hanging, so I could sort of see how they were looking in sequence.
Like a tiny model of the vennel, but
yes.
very
And those paper cutouts became scans, which then became vector drawings, which then became laser cut aluminium pieces.
So some of them are like almost like for like they're like scale.
They actually are
scale models. Essentially.
Yeah. So it's all come from a tiny drawing actually, but this size, and now it's like giant.
So I guess the next part of the process was thinking about the materials that we wanted to use, and we knew we were going to do aluminium and get that laser cut, but we had to do a lot of chatting with fabricators about the thickness of that aluminium, how it was going to hang. We had to research all
cut out elements as well.
Yeah, the cut out elements, the chains, the fittings. There's quite a lot of technical stuff in these designs that's kind of pushed us out of our comfort zone, I guess. I mean, I make a lot of signs, but they are normally on a smaller scale and often just a rectangle shape, and I don't always have to think about the hanging and that side of it, so I was confident with the aluminium and the paint that we were going to use and all of that side of it, but actually working out how the structure was going to be made was
it's quite new territory, I guess. And the other thing that was new territory was commissioning somebody to weld the brackets. So we came up with designs for the brackets, but as non-welders ourselves, I guess there were some things where we're like not quite sure what's structurally like doable. So we took that to a welder, named Matt Rose, to
work out on. Because there's a mix of things there where it needed to be able to hold the weight of the signs, so there's a certain size the brackets have to be, and the triangle that goes on the wall that has to work with the load, but then also we wanted them super decorative, so it's kind of blending those two things, and working with someone else and having their input on that was interesting. I think we switched into a client role, which we're not normally in.
Yes, we're usually doing things for other people. Commissioning someone to do something for us. So.
But it was cool to be able to have that budget and the scope of the project to commission another craftsperson. Like, there's very few people doing that, like kind of blacksmith and welding stuff in Scotland, so it's
and especially someone who would accommodate your kind of more arty ideas about it, not just like a classic kind of piece of ironwork, but something quite bespoke.
With the painting of the signs, after they were cut out of the aluminium, that was a slightly more familiar part of the process. I think I work a lot with aluminium painting on metal, so I knew that we could use the signwriting paints, which is enamel, and certain types of metal primer and that sort of thing. But that was a new thing for you, so that was quite interesting to be able to do the skill share with that. And also for me, it was cool because I wanted to look into if there was any enamels that gave more flexibility with kind of layering up and mixing colours, a more kind of painterly approach, because when you're painting lettering, what you normally need is just colours that are very flat, very opaque, but you're normally doing like one colour and then you leave that to dry and then you come back and do another colour, so there's like a sort of 6-hour drying time, then you do the next one, and traditionally those paints aren't great for shading, like mixing, kind of blending, that sort of thing. So ended up getting the paints that you use for doing narrowboat roses and kind of narrowboat decoration, because they're also enamel, but they're kind of open for slightly longer, I think is the phrase, in that they don't go tacky quite as fast, but they dry faster, which is interesting. So you can layer them up, but you can also blend them, and they're actually just like much nicer to use for the kind of thing that you were going to be doing. Initially for me that paint was so different to what I would usually use. Then I was a bit like, I don't really like it. You were annoyed.
I didn't like it, and then actually over the process of using it, came to really appreciate the qualities of it, and to the point where when I went back to using acrylic, I was like, this is horrible. So it's interesting, to see how you can kind of how a material like will kind of inform what you're doing. I hope that it sort of speaks to people who kind of would have known McEwen's, or who maybe had family members who worked there or have fond memories of it. I think because there's so many little sort of specific references in it, it would be so nice if that would sort of spark memories and kind of make people think back to that era and kind of more broadly like what it was like maybe in Perth at that time. So that's, I'd say that's my hopes for the piece, that it kind of like brings about, I don't know, maybe like a little bit like civic pride, I guess, in what's been here historically.
I would hope it would also like prompt people to look into it a bit more and like maybe draw them into the museum or to the art gallery to sort of check out like other things that are related to it. I think as well it's always great to have more pieces of like handmade, hand-painted public art or signage specifically, because it shows people what you can do and what you can have. Hopefully it would encourage people to invest more in that as well if they're business owners or companies, charities, any of those things, to be like, this is what a difference it can make to a public space.
I think creativity in public spaces is so important. Like, I think we live in a world that doesn't like give a lot of space to beauty or to things just existing without an ulterior motive of selling something, for example. Like, we're surrounded by so much advertising. I feel like it's a good counterweight to that. And I think just for people's general well-being and kind of feeling uplifted, feeling like the place that you're in sort of is worth having work made for it, work to celebrate it. I think it brings about like positive feelings. Certainly in the past, like painting murals and things, we always get really, really positive feedback that it really just like kind of lifts people's mood.
Yeah.
So
it's the classic line when we're painting murals, people will always come by and say, really brightens the place up. Brightens the place up, and it's
that's true.
And that's
I think colour in
important.
public space, especially in Scotland, where it's quite grey, it's like really kind of beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, from another point of safety and making, like, softening public spaces, if you're going to go look into that side of it, it's having art and murals and installations, it's showing that a space is cared for, showing that there's people looking after it, there's people looking out. It does make this place safer for people to move through and make them feel safer and feel that they can use the space, that it's they're allowed to be there, and
So I'd say with Perth being the UK's UNESCO City of Craft, that I guess that really pushed like the idea or the concept of craft to the forefront of what we wanted to produce. Like, we wanted it to really kind of reflect craft history in the imagery, but also in the form, also in the making of the project. I guess also, I mean, the two of us, we have like both quite hybrid practices, and part of what we do is craft. You also work in textiles as well.
Yeah, I do textiles as well as signwriting, and like kind of everything I do would fall under the umbrella of craft rather than art in the eyes of the fine art world. And I think this commission, the open call, really appealed to me because of the focus on craft. I think sometimes it's intimidating when you see these open calls that are definitely more aimed at like fine art grads or practitioners, and you can feel a bit othered and a bit undervalued.
I don't quite fit into that world,
totally, as somebody who works in craft. And it's a historical thing. It's like also a feminist issue, because a lot of crafts are dominated by women, and whereas painting was always historically men, and so they can deep dive into the politics behind it. But
there's historically been a sort of undervaluing of craft versus fine art, and then I think like a contemporary issue of craft versus mass-produced objects that produced under capitalism, and the two, it's very hard to kind of compete with that.
People want everything at the same price if they can have it.
So in a way, craft makers are also kind of like having to defend their practice a bit, I think. So I think, I don't know, I guess it feels like a positive thing to like this commission sort of sits within a city that has like given value to craft and is trying to kind of like promote the profile of craft and craft makers. So it felt like a kind of a natural place for us to sit within in what we do and what we wanted to make.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great that it was the whole commission. So all of the vennels, it was all looking to celebrate craft and to incorporate that into it. It's not a tokenistic approach where you're just that add-on one at the end. It's it's part of the whole. That's really great.